So today, if you've been wondering about when you should claim Social Security, if you should wait for full retirement age, or if you're going to wait to age 70 and collect the maximum amount that you're entitled to, I've created a dashboard that allows you to test out each one of those scenarios and see what is best for you. Now, it is not financial advice. You need to consult a professional for that, but it does allow you to see the different choices and what the impact of those choices would be. So we're going to get into a step-by-step walkthrough of the dashboard, and then there will be a link in the description of where you can go to purchase it. So let's get started. So during today's demonstration, I'm going to remain off camera that way because the screen is full. I don't have to keep moving my face around. So up to the right, I do allow you to export the report after you've entered all your data and you see how each scenario or each one of your choices impacts your finances. And the reason I've done this is because this is an HTML file, which means this opens up on your browser. It's not on the internet and it doesn't save. So if you use it on your computer and then you turn around and use it on your phone or laptop, the information will not transfer over. For each browser, for each device, it will automatically refresh. So after each session, if you're going to do different scenarios or you think you're going to be using this on different devices, after each session, I would export the report. So let's get started. Over here, I had already entered Social Security. What age do you think you're going to claim? It goes up to 66 because at 67 is full retirement age and the earning limitations are no longer in effect. So at age 62, I'm going to assume your first benefits at that level are around $2,000. At full retirement age, they'll go up to $2,800. These are not, I'm trying to create a realistic demonstration, but these are not actual numbers that I claim. But anyway, age 70, we're going to assume 3712. Life expectancy, you're expecting to live to age 90. If you go over here to the right, on an annual basis, this is what you will collect. You're going to be collecting for 28 years, and over a lifetime, you will collect 672,000. It would go up to 772,000 and then 890. Now, what this does right here is this shows if you only waited until full retirement age, the difference between you collecting at 67 and 62 over the lifetime, over 23 years, is a difference of 100,000. If you waited until age 70, as opposed to collecting the 2,000, it's a difference of 218,000 over the lifetime. And I had mentioned in a previous video, I took those numbers and annualized them so they would be more realistic, because you do have to, it is a difference, no doubt there is a difference, but we're going to go through different scenarios to show the impact, because when you wait to age 70, you also did not collect over an 8-year time period, and you could have either invested that money or done other things. So it all depends on what you need during this retirement season, what lifestyle you're looking for, and the things that I've said in the other video. Now we're going to go down to your earnings, the next section of the dashboard. This is assuming that before full retirement age, the government allows you to earn, in this year is $24,480. The annual cost of living adjustment, I googled it, and it is 2.8. Oops. 2.8%. So every year they do increase your benefits for cost of living. So based on this, you can earn without any impact the 2,040. So that's assuming if you decide to, before full retirement work, you can make that amount. When you move down to the next section, it starts to incorporate that into the numbers. And it does it for 5 years. So if you do the drop down, it tells you how the math is calculated. So the monthly side income is initially multiplied by 12 months for 1 year, and then 5 years, because between age 62 and 67. So you would earn roughly 122,000. So now, You're taking your benefits for $2,000. You're earning an additional $2,040, and the gap between 62 and 67 was originally 100,000. So at 100,800, you're now going to earn potentially 122,000. So you're actually ahead of the game by $78 a month. But however, if you had waited to age 70, you would have gotten 218,000. Based on the current amount earnings limits for this year, it's 122,000 over the 5 years. You're still at a deficit of 96,000, roughly about $350 a month difference between what you would collect at age 70 versus this. So it's factoring in, it's not just about the simple math, because they do allow you to still earn. So if you just don't want to work a full-time job anymore, you're not sure you want to remain in corporate America, you're thinking about just doing something on your own, this shows the impact of what those earnings do for your budget. So let's move down to the next section, which are your expenses, because we haven't factored those in yet. If you will recall, if you've been following this series, I did do the first or second video was based on figuring out how much you would actually need, or projecting how much you would need in retirement, instead of just guessing, taking your expenses, estimating if some of them will increase or decrease, or if you will have expenses in retirement that you don't actually have now because of the lifestyle that you are anticipating living in that season of your life. We're going to just do an estimate of about $4,500 a month. And then it asks, how much do you have in retirement? We're going to say $1 million, because that is like the magic bullet for most people, that they want to save at least $1 million for retirement. 6% I think is conservative. I think on average it might actually be 10, even like the index funds, I think average about 10%. But we're going to go conservative at 6%. Your filing status is single. Now this does not, the only thing it factors into is when we get over to the tax implications, because married and single have different tax rates. So that's the only thing that does. And then if you had any other money coming in, like a pension, you could enter that here, $1,000, $1,200, if you had anything coming in outside of Social Security and your 401ks, mainly a pension or something, because we take into account earnings here. So after all of that is done, so we're going to do 2 different scenarios. We have scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3. But before we get into the different scenarios, we'll look at the earnings impact. So what this does is it brings down the number, the 24,480. That's assuming you're going to stay within the guidelines and you are not going to earn more than that. If you do, it starts to take, and this is all assuming before full retirement age, because this formula does change after that. I think it's 1 to every $3 earned. But we're assuming that you're earning money before you reach age 67, depending on when you were born. But this assumes age 67. So let's go up and actually change the earnings to $2,500 as opposed to staying within the guidelines. So now if you go down, you've actually earned $30,000. You've exceeded what the government will allow by $5,520. They're going to withhold $2,700, and it's my understanding they do it month by month. So in this case, they will withhold one of your checks because you have exceeded what they would allow you to earn. If you do the drop down, it explains how the math was calculated. So if you want to know, if you increase it and you just go crazy and you earn, let's say, $3,500 more a month, and you go down, now you've earned $42,000. You're $17,000 over what they allow. That's $8,000. They're going to withhold 4 checks. So it just allows you to input different monthly earnings to see how that will impact the Social Security that you're collecting. So before we move on, I'm going to put this back to the 2040. And we're going to go down to scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3. So scenario 1 assumes that you are claiming at age 62. Your expenses are $4,200. You're collecting $2,000 in benefits and $2,040 in side income. You still have a deficit of $460. And that was done by 4,500 minus the 2,000 minus the 2,040. Your budget is still short $460. You have to bridge that gap somehow, whether now you're going to exceed the amount that the government allows you to earn, or you're going to just start trimming the fat out of your budget. But whatever you decide to do, under that scenario, you're still short. There's a gap of $460. The next scenario is scenario 2, that assumes you're going to wait until full retirement age to collect your benefits. Now, currently we have the $2,040 inputted into how much you're going to earn. But if you're not collecting benefits yet, that limitation actually does not impact you. So under this case, if you, for some reason, I don't know why you would do that, if you only earned the $2,040, you're short. The gap is $2,400. But you can go in here and just start entering different numbers to see what your gap will be if you leave work, but you don't start collecting until age 67. You're still short based on this now at a $1,000. There's a gap. So now you're either going to cover that by withdrawing from your savings. You have to figure out how you're going to bridge the gap between what your expenses are and the amount of cash flow you have coming into your household. Now, I need to put an asterisk here. It is included in the guide that goes with this dashboard, because that input field of earnings is not only being used for your earnings impact to see how your benefits will be impacted, it's also being used to figure out the gap and the impact on your portfolio, meaning your 401k savings, your Roth savings, your IRAs. It's being used for two different purposes. So when you're looking at the numbers, keep that in mind. That if you're waiting to age 67, this earning impact, even though these numbers are being updated, they don't impact you because you're not collecting yet. So I just want to point that out, because to try to take into account everybody's situation and everybody's scenario, the calculations and the math going on behind the scene, it just gets too complicated. So if you're waiting until full retirement age, just ignore number 3. Now let's move on and put this back to 2040. Scenario 3 assumes you're going to wait to age 70. You have your expenses minus your benefits, which are zero. You're not taking your benefits yet. Minus side income, which you've decided you don't want to work at all. You're going to live strictly off your savings. If you watch the video, which I'll post a link in the description, where I spoke to Mike, this is his situation. He's going to live off of his investments. He's planned for this season of his life. He doesn't want to work at all, and he's strictly going to use his investments to live on. So obviously, with no other income coming in, your deficit is $4,500, and you have to cover all of it from your savings. If you do the drop down, it explains how all of these numbers are calculated. We move over to the tax implications. So at age 62, age 67, and age 70, if you click the drop down, it will explain how the government calculates or estimates the taxes. We're going to just stick with age 62. So based on everything, this shows you how that number was reached. So you're maxing out the earnings of $24,480. They only tax, the only portion that is subject to tax is 50% of your benefits, which we had said was $2,000. So times 12 is 24,000. So that's how they get to the 36,480. So now at that threshold, you can be up to 85% of your Social Security could be taxable. So in this case, how they've reached that, let me bring up my calculator. So how we've reached this number is you were collecting $2,000 a month times the 12 months is 24,000. Up to 85% could be taxable. So that's 24,400. Then it estimates, assuming a tax rate, which may or may not be your tax rate. That's why this is for illustrative purposes only. Consult a professional. Based on a tax rate of 22%. And that's where this number comes from. It does it for each age group, whether it's 67 or 70. It just provides you a point of reference that if you decide to do this, this is about how much you're looking at paying in taxes. So let's just go back up to this section for the inputs. These numbers are being automatically calculated by your GAAP. So how the 29,500 was reached, we said your expenses were 4,500. This number that's still plugged in, we're assuming you're only going to make the 2,040, but you're at full retirement age. You're not taking any benefits. So that number can actually be whatever you want it to be. But in this illustration, it's only 2,040, which means your monthly GAAP is the 2,400 times 12 months brings you to the 29,520. That's how that number was calculated. This is important because when you scroll down to this chart, it's showing you the impact on the $1 million that we said you had set aside for retirement. It's for each different scenario. So you remember with the first scenario, we said there were going to be no withdrawals, but you were $460 short, but you were going to try to find other ways to fill that gap. This is making the assumption you have found some other way and you are not going to withdraw any money from your savings. The second scenario is you're short and you may have to start taking withdrawals to fill the gap. The third scenario was you weren't going to collect, you weren't going to work, you were just going to live off your investments. If you look at, we assume 6%, which I said I thought was conservative, how much the impact of compounding has when you reach age 70. It's 1.6 versus 1.3 versus 1 million. And you would expect this to be the lowest at the end of that because you're taking money out every year. Over here, you're not taking money out, so it's continuing to compound it. The year-over-year growth is more. You go from 60,000, this is 63, it's 67. Over here, it's only 60. By the time you get down, this is 95 versus 63. So as I stated in the beginning, that's why the dashboard was created so you can actually look at different choices, not so much just we said 3,700 at age 70 and 2,000 at age 62, and just don't do the math and say it's a difference of 1,700 a month. Look at the other things that you can do that could bridge that gap if you wanted to. But it's designed to allow you to enter the things that impact your life, not just plug some numbers in and this is what you should do. Look at different scenarios and how the choices impact you. So that this is the impact on a $1 million portfolio at 6%. This is what your portfolio would have grown to if you don't take any withdrawals versus what it will grow to appreciate to if you start taking withdrawals. So in the description, there will be a link if you want to purchase this dashboard. There will also be a link to the original spreadsheet that allows you to calculate your retirement expenses doing different scenarios. But what I'm really curious about, and comment below, Did this actually change your perception of what your choices are, whether you take money your benefits at 62, 67, or 70? Does it give you a little bit more insight that it's not really just, you know, 67 minus 62 or 70 minus 62, that there are other options out there for you to consider? That was my entire purpose behind this series, is just to allow you to see a different perspective on when you should claim your benefit. So if you haven't already, check out the other videos in the series. There will be a link in the description below. And like I said, comment on how this series has maybe made you take a different look at when you should claim your benefits and what other choices you can make regarding your savings or potentially working part-time. As always, have a good one, and I will see you in the next video.